Oh, today on the show we have Russell Schindler. Russell is the CEO and founder of SampleServe. SampleServe offers hardware and software solutions to water sampling. Now, a question you might ask, just like I asked myself, is who needs that and why, and what is the application? What is the value proposition here? Well, it turns out it's very interesting and it's very substantial and crucial to our everyday lives. We also discuss his journey as an entrepreneur, his mindset, and the cool and exciting ways that entrepreneurship, a certain value proposition, a certain technology can evolve over time to have applications in markets that you could have never imagined when you had started your company. So I'm grateful to Russell for that. That's an important perspective to keep in mind. Thank you, as always, to our partners, Craze and Friends, for production. If you're looking to grow in any industry, they're the people to talk to. And to do a Clean Tech Growth Lab. If you're looking to grow in clean tech, those are the people to talk to. And with that, I bring you Russell. Oh, welcome to another episode of The Grow. Shout out to our sponsors mentioned right before this started, but without them, it would not be possible to interview awesome people doing awesome things like Russell. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Something we were just talking about is Russell's almost surrounded by water. So it makes sense to me that you've ended up
I'm
where you're at.
I'm
Um,
all about water.
that's right.
Big sailboat racer
Oh, nice.
on the water all the time.
Oh, like, well, I hope when you're out there, you're not thinking about work, even though you're very invested in it,
No,
professionally
when
as
I'm at
well.
work, I'm thinking about sailing.
Oh, okay, all right. So then maybe you earned it. But so with that, for anybody that doesn't know yet, if you could give a brief introduction of yourself and what you're building.
Yep. So Russell Schindler, I'm a geologist. I've been doing environmental work since I got out of college a long time ago, 1987, and I started out as a regular geologist doing environmental investigations and stuff. And in 2001, I actually started my own environmental consulting engineering company. Grew it to like 33 people, I think it was. In 2001, the state of Michigan changed some rules on how to collect environmental samples, and people that basically they developed what's called low flow sampling. There's a lot of confusion in the industry, and not a lot of people knew how to do it. So I decided I was going to start my own company specializing in collecting samples, like a third party sampling company. So I started SampleServe in 2001 as a sampling as a service company. And so we sampled for other companies and went all over the country. We actually ended up having offices all over the place. Grew it to a pretty big company. As I went around asking companies to um, let us, hire us to do their sampling for them, a lot of big consulting engineering companies, people started asking if they could use our software because I started creating software early on, actually in 2001. And it was because there was a lot of data, required specialized equipment, and my penmanship is horrible. So we started creating software that would do things that would make it so I didn't have to take so many notes, I didn't have to print so many
Sure.
labels in the field because my penmanship was horrible. I've actually had labs like call me up and go, could you please speak with Russell Schindler and ask him to write his threes and his fives better because we
Yeah.
can't tell the difference? And I'm like, I know what you mean. I'll
Yeah.
have a talk with him. And so, so I started creating software to kind of do a lot of take a lot of the manual work out and make our own operations more efficient.
Gotcha.
The faster we could do it, the more we could kind of take the paperwork out of everything, the sooner everyone got home. And so, fast forward, the software got better and better. I'm like, I got all this data. I could start creating some graphics for my customers, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Taking that data and put it on graphics. And so I'm talking to these consulting engineering companies going, hey, if you hire us to do your sampling, you could use our software as well, included with the package. And a lot of, people started going like, hey, you know what, we really like to do our own sampling, but your software is pretty cool. Is there any way we could just use your software? And I was like, no. I'm like, I'm not a software company.
Yeah.
I'm a sample. I'm a
How,
geologist,
how
right? A
long ago was this?
sampling company. And after I heard that enough times, I was like, what, maybe I should let him use it. I mean, like, this time of year when it's snowing and blowing out and it's cold, you're
Yeah.
like, I wouldn't have to go outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
As I get older, it seemed more and more appealing not to have to go outside all the time. When I was younger, I kind of liked it.
Sure.
But so I was like, we eventually transitioned into a software company. And actually in 2022, I actually sold off the sampling side. So we're
Oh wow.
just pure software now.
Awesome.
So,
That was an incredible overview. I mean, I usually like to get into those types of timelines anyway, so I'm glad
yeah.
that you presented that because I have a bunch of questions lined up for that. So right before we get into that, though, I'm curious for you personally. I mean, it sounds one of my favorite questions is this your first venture? And it seems like it's not. You started a company beforehand. So my question for you is, has starting a company, being an entrepreneur, been something that you envisioned yourself doing or wanted to be since you were young, or did you stumble into it after studying geology?
I was actually answering that question just the other day. I've started about 18 different companies.
Oh wow.
And not all of them are, most of them were not in the environmental world. One of them had to do with sailing. I started a charter boat in Traverse City, where I'm at, which is still going to this day. It's a big catamaran sailboat. So when I say I'm into sailing, I still am really into sailing. So,
Yeah, right.
and then, I had a jet ski rental operation for a while. And, so all kinds of weird stuff because it is a big tourist town and right on the lake. And so, the jet ski rental was natural. And I started a whole bunch of stuff. But, the ones that have really been my passion have been either related to sailing or the environmental industry. So,
Gotcha. Since we're here and you got the sample serve behind you, I'm curious. So let's see, if oh, how let's just pick two. I'm curious if there's two main experiences from the other 17 ventures that you've been involved with that and an example could come from just from SampleServe as well, just an earlier version of it. But let's just talk about two experiences or impactful lessons or something that you learned or acquired that impact how you navigate running SampleServe.
yeah, so like I mentioned, I was a geologist and now I'm a software company. I always tell people, I go, I'm a software owner of a software company, but I've never written a line of code in my life. Never. Like, I don't write the code. But early on, I was working with, when I say early on, I'm talking 2001. I was working with software developers. So over the years, I've learned how to talk to them. I learned what they can and can't do. I've picked up on some of the, acronyms and the lingo, and I know how, you know, essentially things talk to each other. And I don't do any of that type of work. I just kind of help design it and come up with the concepts and that kind of thing. So that was the big thing. And I probably really got into it like in 2012, 2013 when I was starting to get these questions about people wanting to use our software and started thinking like, maybe we should be a software company. And so I started going to and here was my theory. I started going to all these tech meetings and meeting software people. And my theory was, like, if you're trying to learn a new anything, I equated it to trying to learn a new language. And in a way, coding and software is a new language.
Sure.
If you're trying to learn a new language, the best way to learn that language is to go to that country and live there.
Hmm.
So I was like, I need to immerse myself in the software world. And so I just started going to all these tech meetings. And, it didn't take very long. When I say not very long, a couple of years.
Sure.
And I could start to tell what they're talking about and how software companies should be structured and who you need to do what. And, so that's kind of how it all about. So that was really the big thing, is like you really have to immerse yourself in that world in order to kind of absorb it. And it can
Gotcha.
be done with any industry.
Right, right. So okay, so cool. That's really useful. So definitely, there are a lot of people I think that don't come from a software background, find themselves solving a problem, and discover that software is potentially the best way to go about that. So I think the perspective of anybody can learn how to speak software is helpful and inspiring. So I'm definitely around that. I have written lines of code, but I'm not a developer.
Right. Yeah.
So, is there a second thing that comes to mind that that seems to be particularly impactful for you?
You have to learn to just know you're going to have sleepless nights. You're going to wake up in cold sweats worrying about how you're going to pay the bills and whether you're going to go out of business and kind of second guessing yourself. You're going to have clients go, get out of my office,
Yeah.
like, and, some people take that stuff personally. And believe me, there's times where I do as well, but you got to learn to shrug it off and just go, look, you're not going to please all the people all the time, and some people aren't going to like you. And competitors are going to be critical of you, and you just kind
Sure.
of go like, well, of course they are. And so you just have to really have some thick skin, and just know that you just got to keep trudging along and just kind of keep putting the effort in. And I'm not saying some people should quit, and I'm not.
Sure.
Sometimes people go way beyond their what they should be doing.
Sure.
Sometimes they just have a bad idea.
Yeah.
But you really got to have thick skin and just have that desire and drive, and know that every day is not roses and sunshine.
Gotcha.
You know, so
Good. Those are two awesome, I think, pieces of information that will, if nothing else, help people feel seen. Because I know personally, I've experienced both of the things that you're speaking to. So I appreciate you talking about both of those things. Something I want to go back to is is when you said Michigan had changed the laws around the type of sampling, type of water sampling that was occurring in the state. Are those laws the same now?
yeah. As a matter of fact, Michigan was probably one of the first adopters of this technique called low flow sampling, and pretty much everybody requires it now.
Okay, so
So
can you talk about what that is, why it's beneficial, things like that, why there was confusion at the beginning?
yeah, so the way it works, so used to be that you would just kind of purge a monitoring well and then take a sample. Well, in the act of purging the monitoring well, especially if you're very aggressive about it, you're going to aerate the water, and you don't necessarily know that you're getting water straight out of the aquifer. It could just be the water in the well casing. And so the idea behind low flow sampling is to be able to prove that the water you're putting in the sample container is fresh from the aquifer with a minimal amount of uh, disturbance to the chemistry of that water. Now, you'll never be able to pull it from the aquifer and put it in a container without changing some of the physical and chemical characteristics of the water a little bit. The idea is to make that change as minimal as possible. And so, low flow sampling, you're pumping water out of the aquifer, and the water is going to start going down inside a monitoring well. It's going to create what's called drawdown. But you don't want to draw it down too much, because now this water flowing in is going to be agitated, aerated. When you aerate water with volatile chemicals in it, you're actually moving the water, the chemical, from the water to the vapor, and it's essentially, lowering the water concentration. It might just be by, fractions of a percent, but it is happening. And so when you are pumping the water out, you're going to measure temperature, pH, conductivity, a whole bunch of other physical characteristics. And what you're trying to do is see the change. When you're measuring the change, you're taking a reading like every 3 minutes, every 5 minutes on all these parameters. And then as you're pumping and the water starts to stabilize, that drawdown where the water flowing into the well is equal to the water flowing out of the well. So that drawdown stops because the pressure differential on the outside of the well versus the inside, it equilibrates. The flow in equals the flow out. and now the physical and chemical characteristics that you're measuring, temperature, pH, etc., start to stabilize, you can then almost certainly say that you are getting water fresh from the aquifer because you're measuring it up top of the well. You're getting water fresh from the aquifer, and you're changing the physical and chemical characteristics as minimal as possible. And now, once all those things stabilize, and our software actually calculates all that for you, and it's pretty big algorithms, right? I mean, it's a big process. The typical time it takes to sample a well is about 20 to 40 minutes, right? 20 is about the low end. Some wells will go 90 minutes.
Gotcha.
So then you'll open up the container and you're going to try and very gently put that water in the bottle, and then you put it on ice and send it to the lab.
So-
now our software also, we use portable label printers to print labels. I don't know if you can see those. We got different QR codes. I already pulled one of those off. So there's 2 QR codes. We put one of those QR codes on the lid of the bottle, and then that allows the labs to, without having to pick up the bottle and log everything in, they just use a separate app that we have. Here's one of our apps right there. This is the field app. We have a second lab app that the lab scans these QR codes, and they don't have to type anything in. It just pushes that data file right into the laboratory. Most of the time, when I say most of the time, 99% of the time right now, people are handwriting these labels, handwriting the chain of custody, and now the lab has to go in and type that data in.
I kind of what
With
you
our
were speaking
software,
to.
yeah, pardon me?
Kind of what you were speaking to before about the handwriting.
Yeah, right. And that is wrought with problems. And as you might imagine, I'm from an older generation, and my penmanship is horrible. As new people are growing up on keyboards, right? They're growing up. The penmanship quality is actually going down.
Yeah.
Like penmanship legibility is actually getting worse over time.
So I appreciate the explanation about the low flow. Just about the beginning of SampleServe as well. What was the confusion at the beginning, and what was the opportunity that you?
Well, before they would just like go to the well, purge a bunch of water out, and take the sample, right? And now it is reading data every 3 to 5 minutes, calculating the percentage of change. So if you've got temperature of, say, and we usually use Celsius, the initial water coming out of the well is like 8 degrees Celsius, but then it goes from 8 to 8.1 to 8.2 to 8.3. And usually it'll change. There's temperature changes because the water in the well casing, right? So it's a pipe with a screen at the bottom. You're trying to pull water into the screen, and now it's fresh from the aquifer, and that water in the well up high is going to be different than the water in the aquifer at the screened interval.
And that's what you chose to specialize in?
Yeah, essentially. So that's what we specialized in. Now we've since transitioned into other types of sampling. Soil, surface water. As a matter of fact, our biggest area of growth right now is in the drinking water facility, so the municipal drinking water. One of the contracts we have is with a firm that is doing all of the municipal drinking water sampling for the entire state of Texas. So 7,200 separate cities in Texas are using our app to collect their drinking water sampling every day. Any given day, there's 45, 50 people out in the field in Texas somewhere collecting, 200-300 drinking water samples every day using our software.
Yeah, so you started to allude to it right there. What, who are the companies in the world that are using your software? You just spoke municipal.
So some of the bigger consulting engineering companies, Stantec and TIA, some mid-sized companies. I'm trying to think of some other companies that are using it. I don't want to say them if they're not really using it very much. A bunch of mid-sized companies, oil companies are using it. A lot of wastewater and drinking water facilities.
Gotcha.
So we picked up, some big engineering companies are using it for drinking water and wastewater.
Have you always been servicing the same kinds of clients, or has that evolved over time?
It's evolved over time. So you can imagine a groundwater associated. So we have essentially 2 distinct markets. the environmental market, we call it, and that's where there was like some kind of spill, leaking underground storage tank, a pipeline broke, maybe a refinery where there's been a spill and groundwater contamination is, moving and migrating. That's kind of where I grew up. But there's a whole nother market we call the municipal market, and that's the drinking water facilities. So every city, you probably live in a city that's got city drinking water. And then they also usually have a wastewater system as well. So they got water coming in, they got to test it. Everyone's heard of the Flint water crisis in Flint, Michigan,
Sure.
right? Right. That's kind of where it really emphasized, like, you got to test your drinking water constantly because it can change over time. You have all kinds of little issues that contaminate the drinking water, and they want to make sure that everything's running well, so they test it frequently. Well, the state of Texas is using our app to send people out all over the place and test water.
Sure.
So at these same cities, they'll have wastewater treatment systems, right? Water comes into your house, you use it, flush the toilet, whatever, take a shower, goes out to the wastewater treatment plant, and now they're treating it, and they got to discharge to some surface water somewhere. So they want to know what's coming in because it does change over time. During the day, they got industrial facilities,
Sure.
they've got, all kinds of stuff. They've got processes inside the wastewater treatment plant that they have to test all the time, and then they have discharges to surface waters usually, the river or a lake. Like I'm in Traverse City, they discharge to the Boardman River, which discharges right into Lake Michigan. So
Gotcha.
they're testing that every day, collecting samples every day. And so they're using our app, even our own wastewater treatment plant here in Traverse City is using our software.
So
That's kind of the other municipal market.
yeah, I think something that's extremely interesting about your trajectory is how drastically it has evolved. Because at first, specifically, I mean, you said you're a services company, which means that you were testing all the time the hardware. You weren't developing the hardware yourself, or you weren't, correct? You were.
No, no, no.
Yeah.
It's off
So
the shelf hardware.
gotcha. But you were using it all the time and becoming very familiar with the market and understanding what the
Yep.
best tools were and things like this. And then you transitioned into eventually, like you're saying, completely software, and to the point where you sold initially the sampling arm of the company. So over time, with all of the different opportunities at any given time that are available to you to build the company towards, how did you make the decisions about what to prioritize and when and how to build it?
Well, quite frankly, and I kind of kicked myself about the municipal market. I wasn't really that. I knew it was there. I didn't think it was that big, and it's as big as the environmental side, maybe bigger. So I wish I would have identified that market sooner, because it's almost the exact same process, different questions that people ask, different field data that you're collecting, but it's the same bottle labeling process and shipping it to the laboratory and having that digital chain of custody. That's really what we have. We have 2 patents on digital chain of custody. And so I wish I would have learned about that a little bit more. But there are even other markets that we're considering going into. As a matter of fact, as we speak, we are starting a new company for crime scene evidence collection, because it turns out that collecting an environmental sample, putting a label on it, sending it to the lab using digital chain of custody is the exact same way they do crime scene evidence, right? Only there is no digital product in the crime scene world. They're all using paper processes, just like the environmental world was, prior to us. And so that's a whole nother market. Cannabis is another big market, although as you might expect, it's a little weird market. It's not legal in every state, so whenever they do have legalized cannabis, they require all kinds of testing. And so that's another market that we've dabbled in a little bit, but I haven't pushed real hard just because it's kind of a immature market.
Sure.
So,
And so at some point you said at the beginning, in order to make the decision to pivot into software, you said it's just because you heard it enough or it had been requested enough. So
Yeah.
what was that level of enough? Because I think there's a lot of founders that are faced with the same thing. I mean, when you have a business that has momentum, there's like 50 different directions that you could take the company on any given day and choose to build it. And you just have to do uh, the best that you can with the data available to you at the time. So can you walk us through that decision to invest in? Like, was it gradual? Did you test it? Did you jump right in?
So the decision to really become a software company, like that was what we were going to focus on. It stands out vividly in my head where I was talking to a big major consulting engineering company, and they're like, "Look, we like to do our own sampling, but if you can let us use your software, we'd be happy to try your software out." And I was like, "Well, I'm not in the software business." And they're like,
Yeah.
"Okay, well." And they literally, the last thing they said as I'm walking out the door was, "If you change your mind on that software, let us know." That's what they said to me. I can remember. I can tell you the person's name.
How long ago was this?
This is like 2013,
Got it.
2014, somewhere in there. And as I'm walking out the door, I can remember walking through the parking lot, going to my car. I'd actually driven from Traverse City to Detroit, which is like a 4-hour drive. And I'm going to drive home. And I can just remember him going like, maybe I should let him use the software. You know what I mean? I can just remember going like, maybe I should, just because I'm like, I'd get some money out of this. I just wasted a day, right? I can get something out of these guys, and I was like, well, I'm not a software company though.
Mm.
But I was like, well, our software is pretty cool, right? I mean, like they're asking to use it, so that's when it was like, if they're asking to use it, like maybe I should let them use it. So that was really the impetus. And then I had heard that a little bit before and a little bit after, but that one conversation was really got me thinking. And you know, and then another one, I was talking to a guy from Ford Motor Company, and he was literally like, if you could figure out a way to do digital chain of custody, that would be great. He goes, because this paper chain of custody stuff is just wrought with problems, right? And it just takes a lot of time. People's penmanships, they don't fill everything out, right? And
And this is
so
13, 14 years into your company.
yeah, this is probably
Gotcha.
about And I started thinking, I honest God, when he actually challenged me with that, it was like the head environmental guy for Ford Motor Company, and he challenged me with that, and I was like, let me see what I can do. I literally, that's exactly what I said. Let me think about that. And I started thinking and started thinking. I had some employees that were working for me, bouncing off ideas off of them. I'm starting to write things down, working out how this might work back and forth. By this time, I already know a little bit about software, right?
Sure.
And so I kind of put this together, and I'm like, talk to some software people. Is this going to work? You think? And like, yeah, I think we can build that. And so I actually filed for some patents, and it took a year and a half to get issued the patents,
Okay.
but I got the patents issued. So
For the
digital
software component.
for the digital chain of custody part
Oh,
of it,
understood.
because there was no digital chain of custody out there prior to that.
Gotcha. And then after that, you had committed more seriously to developing the software product. And
That's so the patents got issued in late 2018,
you said we're going.
and I said, "That's it, man!" Like, and by that time we had already kind of built out the software as
Interesting.
well.
Okay. Absolutely.
Um,
Okay. So during that time, in that year and a half, you had built out the software. You used
yeah,
resources to do. Okay.
yeah. So when you file for a patent, I actually have 7 patents to my name. I'm actually working on an 8th right now, but the it takes years, right, for the patent people to get through the process.
Sure.
But you can start saying patent pending the day you drop your patent application in the mail,
Hmm.
right? You can say patent pending doesn't mean you have a patent, but
Sure.
you've applied for one. And so, which offers a little bit of protection. Somebody can still copy your patent pending, but if you get the patent, they can't use it anymore. And so, we started building out the digital chain of custody process, and in a year and a half later, we got issued the patents. So
Understood. Awesome. So with where you're at, with where you're at now, with your perspective on, well, I guess the company's gone in the direction off of that patent, the digital, uh, what was it called? The chain of
digital chain of custody.
digital chain of custody. I was going to say chain of command.
Yeah,
Digital chain of
everything is a
custody.
very common mistake. They see
Yeah,
chain,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
chain of custody.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so what I'm curious about, and let me know if this is an accurate question for where SampleServe is at the moment. But I'm curious what the state of the industry is with water sampling specifically, because I understand it's really cool and interesting and exciting for you that there's other applications. And I'm curious, how this technology has been implemented in these different areas that pertain to water sampling specifically. What are the pain points? What are the solutions? Where does your solution fall in that? Things like that.
So the big pain point is like chain of custody, right? When you're doing things on paper, people can, one, penmanship's a big problem. Two, they just simply don't fill it out, right? They fill out the form, but they don't put the date down, right? And so you're like, okay, great, I got all this other information, but what day did this happen on? Which you would think is like, they would naturally put it on there, but a lot of people don't. What time, that kind of stuff. And when you do it digitally, you can mandate fields. I can actually just pull the date automatically, right? Because the device is going to have the date in the cloud and the time from the cloud. And so it saves a lot of time because there's stuff you don't have to, populate. And it really streamlines things. And then the big benefit is it starts assembling your reports, like your data files and the documents, your field data forms, where all the data you collected, you can take photographs and it all becomes one record. It starts assembling that. So as soon as you're done sampling, that document that on that all the data that you collected from sampling is actually available if you're connected to the internet. Is actually available to your project manager seconds after you're done. So it's like your project manager can actually sit over your shoulder and see what data you collected just now. You don't have to wait to get back to the office. There's been many, many instances where people get corrected before they're done, but before they even left the site. They're like, "Hey, dummy, you sampled the wrong well. You're on the wrong location," because they can see the pictures, they can see the GPS, and so or they go, "Hey, you said that the depth of the well is, 100 feet deep. It's only 10 feet. It's 10.0, not 100.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
Forgot the decimal."
So,
And so they can make those corrections right there before they leave the site,
so,
which is
you,
a big time saver.
yeah. So you would say, as far as the water sampling industry goes, the biggest pain point among everything is more logistical than anything.
Logistical and accuracy. So we built in some guardrails. Like, say if you're putting in, you're entering pH, we've got it so you can't enter 15, right? Because there's no 15 pH. It goes from
Gotcha.
1 to 4.
Sure.
So you put guardrails around data. The format is automatically set. In the water and wastewater plant, we built in alerts. So if you're discharging to a surface water, the regulatory agencies will mandate that you collect discharge samples every day. Well, sometimes people forget to get them, right? Some guy calls in sick, someone else thinks that someone else is doing it, and it doesn't get collected.
Gotcha.
Next thing you know, you're getting $1,000 fine from the regulators. Or somebody collects it, and they're going to hand it off to somebody else, and that person's supposed to take it to the lab. So we build in these alerts that say, if this isn't collected by 9 a.m., send out text messages and emails and phone calls to these people to make sure it gets done. And then we've got a secondary alert, because I mentioned earlier that we have a lab portion of this. So if the sample is not at the lab by, say, 1 p.m., because somebody may have collected it, everything's fine there, shuts off the alerts when it was been collected, but it doesn't get to the lab, right? So now we got a secondary alert. It's like, hey, didn't arrive at the lab by 1 p.m. Send out text messages, emails, phone calls. So those are the kind of things that help you make sure that you're on track, you're collecting the right data at the right time, that kind of thing.
The progression of your suite of products sounds very much like to widely generalize and I'd like you to correct me, but with the journey of SampleServe, it really was, there was an opportunity. There was a very niche, specific value proposition that you gave to people that really mattered to them, which was consulting with the sample collection. And over years and years of being consistent with that business, growing that business, there were more opportunities that presented themselves. The deeper that you understood your customer and the ecosystem within your customers, within which your customers existed, and then the more understanding that you had of this ecosystem, the more opportunity you saw for applications of your products, and then you went and built those.
Yep. So we try to do, and not everyone wants to do them, but we try, and you talk them into it, doing what we call customer discovery meetings. We do them monthly. So every new customer we get, we set up a monthly customer discovery meeting. I just had one today at 12:30 with a customer out of Minnesota, and we the first questions I ask them normally are like, okay, any problems, any bugs, any issues you've had over the last month? In the beginning it was like, oh yeah, yeah, they would list them, then I would document them and we'd
Sure.
figure out what happened. Anymore, I'm not saying we never get the bugs or problems, but they're way less frequent than they used to be. Then the second question I ask them is, what can we do better? Is there any things like features, functionalities, anything that we can do to make the software more efficient?
Sure.
And quite frankly, that's where most of our ideas come from now, is through those customer discovery meetings where people go, hey, it'd be nice if you could have some kind of alert. A guy missed a sample last month and, we got fined $10,000 because it was our fifth missed sample this
Sure.
year. And I'm like, oh, so what? Explain that? You're like, yeah, we missed a sample. We got fined $10,000. And then, be like, so the guy was supposed to collect it? Yeah, he collected it, but he put it in the fridge, and the second shift was supposed to take it to the lab.
Right.
And they didn't take it to the lab. And you're like, I think we can work something out, build something out to make that not happen, And so that there's an alert. Like we can't, make the guy drive it to the lab, but we can go, hey, somebody's got to go get that sample that's in the fridge and take it to the lab.
Gotcha.
Right?
So,
So
is there anything at the moment, to my favorite questions, by the way, is there anything at the moment that you would label as your biggest hurdle, and also how is it an opportunity?
So our biggest hurdle right now is we're picking up so many clients so quickly, especially like wastewater treatment plants and drinking water plants. And when I say picking up a lot of them, I'm talking thousands of new customers coming in the pipeline. And right now, our onboarding process, because the wastewater treatment plants schedules are complicated. Like for instance, sometimes you have to collect a sample every shift, right? First shift, second shift, third shift. Sometimes it's just once a day, depends on the size and the volume of water. Sometimes just a couple times a week, but they have daily samples, multiple times a week samples, weekly samples, monthly samples, quarterly samples, semi-annual samples, and annual samples, each from different locations, different parameters that have to be collected. So if you can imagine, they're all stacked on top of one another, right? So sometimes you're going to collect the daily, the weekly, the monthly, and the quarterly all at the same time. And so that kind of complication of schedules, trying to make it as efficient as possible so you don't go, hey, go do that daily sample, and then you're like, oh crap, he already left. I want him to do the monthly sample as well.
Gotcha.
So being able to create that efficiency where that software is just going to automatically organize that. So we kind of do that like manually right now. We're working on some AI agents that are going to look at those schedules and just start stacking sampling events so it's made as efficient as possible. That's our biggest hurdle right now, because right now it takes us 90 minutes, 120 minutes per customer. And I told you we've got thousands in the
Sure.
pipeline. So you start doing the math and you're like, it's a full-time job for somebody just to talk and get them organized, right?
Yep.
And so I know we're trying to get it down to like 10 minutes and then eventually get it to 0 minutes,
Sure.
where you just kind of say, upload your permit, upload your Excel spreadsheet that you have right now, or the bar napkin you've got the schedule on,
Okay.
and the AI will organize it all.
Well, Russell, with all this work left to be done, these hurdles, you keep pushing, you expand into these different opportunities. What inspires you?
It's fun. It is fun, quite frankly. Getting into new markets, solving new problems. The whole crime scene thing is just blowing up, quite frankly.
Nice.
Um, and it's a whole. I like the crime scene. Like growing up, my dad was a detective. So I kind of grew up with cops all over the place. My dad taught me to take fingerprints when I was like 11 years old. So getting into that market is kind of interesting. Um, and just kind of working through how they collect evidence. And I'm by no means a crime scene,
Sure.
expert or anything like that. But tomorrow, actually, I have a meeting with like the top crime scene evidence collection guy in the state of Michigan.
That's
So,
awesome. You
yeah,
might be a little bit of an expert after that.
yeah. Well, I won't be as expert as he's been in the industry for like 26 years, um, but there he's interested in our software, right? He's like, hey, and I've already had a couple of conversations, sent him some PowerPoints, and so he
Sure,
sees
sure.
what we're doing, and so now we're doing a in-person demo tomorrow. So
Awesome. Well, that's
yeah,
that's exciting. So it's fun solving new problems, exploring different opportunities. That's what's inspiring about it.
yeah,
Well, this is well. It's inspiring for me also. I think my personal interest in this is the fact that you work in water. The fact how you've developed into this business that services so many more downstream points than when you first started. The amount of consistency that's in your journey, and also now how it's just happening where you have this core technology that's been applied in this one way, and how it has so many other applications that you're
yeah,
finding, and you have the opportunity to explore. So that's really awesome.
yeah.
I'm excited to see where it goes. I appreciate you sharing about your journey, sharing about SampleServe. What if anyone else was inspired? What's the best way to get in touch or follow along?
Go to sampleserve.com. You can see that right back there.
Right
Sampleserve.com.
there. Right there, sampleserve.com. Russell, thank you so much for your time. Like I said, I'm excited to stay in touch. See where it goes with these new avenues, these new markets you're exploring.
My goals with them.
Oh, just excited to stay in touch.
Oh,
And
yeah, 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 definitely. Yeah, yeah. I hope that your kind of new iteration of what you're doing is going to be successful for you too.
yes, awesome. Well, let's do it. Thank you so much, Russell.
All right.